Captain Jake Morrison stood at the heart of what could only be described as the largest scrap field in the galaxy. His boots crunched over fragments that had once been proud warships from countless alien civilizations. The Galactic Council had indeed been generous, he thought, though the thought left a bitter taste in his mouth. Generous with their garbage and nothing more. Beside him, Lieutenant Amy Brooks clutched a data pad, her expression caught between disbelief and reluctant amusement. Only 30, yet her eyes carried the weight of someone who had survived far too many wars. She had endured the first contact conflicts when humanity first met alien life, and those had been savage, unforgiving wars. Glancing at her pad, Amy read aloud as she scrolled through the Council's official message. "So let me get this straight," she said, her voice edged with disbelief. "We asked for military aid, advanced schematics, starship blueprints, and they send us this pile of junk?" Jake nodded slowly, surveying the wreckage. Around them, teams of human engineers were already combing through the debris, scanners in hand, cataloging whatever fragments they could find. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council just 3 years ago after defending their solar system from a pirate armada, using nothing but refitted mining vessels turned into makeshift warships. They had won simply because surrender was never an option. That defiance had impressed the Council enough to grant them membership, but not enough to share real technology. "They think we're primitive," Jake muttered. "Every new species gets the same treatment. Scraps from old wars, relics from forgotten battles. They tell them to learn from it. Most take decades to make anything useful." Amy's eyes lingered on a scorched metal hull that might once have been a Kravik's destroyer. Its armor was charred black, weapon systems melted beyond recognition. "Most species aren't human, though," she said softly. A slow, knowing grin spread across Jake's face. "No," he agreed. "They're definitely not." A shout echoed behind them. "Captain Morrison." The voice came from Commander Henry Davis, chief engineer of the operation, a stocky man with oil-stained hands that no amount of scrubbing could clean. His mind ran faster than most ship computers, and he had a passion for the impossible. Jake turned toward him. "What have you got, Henry?" Henry's grin was wild, almost manic. "Everything, Captain," he said. Broken Zarathion power cores, damaged Pelion shield generators, half of a Vexen jump drive, fragments of alien armor, 17 different species tech in total. "It's all centuries old and they think it's worthless." Amy raised an eyebrow. "And what do you think, Henry?" Henry's grin widened even further. "We're going to build something none of them have ever imagined," he said. The next 6 months changed everything. What had once been a graveyard of shattered starships became a living, breathing forge of human ingenuity. The salvage yard pulsed with light, heat, and purpose. Humanity did what it had always done best: improvise, adapt, and defy the impossible. They refused to believe that something couldn't work simply because it wasn't designed to. The unstable Zarathian power cores were stripped down to their atoms and rebuilt from scratch. Drawing from Earth's old fusion reactor research, the engineers redesigned the magnetic containment fields until the cores burned hotter and more efficiently than any Zarathian original. The Pelion shields, incompatible with human systems, became the foundation for something new, reprogrammed by human hands to shift frequencies dynamically in real time. The Vexen jump drive, shattered beyond repair, was completely reimagined. The engineers studied its principles, then built an entirely new drive using human manufacturing and materials alien minds had never considered. Every species had built their technology within limits, rigid doctrines shaped by their own understanding of war. Humanity had no such limits. Their history was a chronicle written in blood, invention, and survival. Every defeat had been a lesson, every war a catalyst for evolution. More than any other species, humanity had mastered one skill, the art of killing efficiently. Jake watched from above as the ship's skeleton took form in the construction bay. It looked nothing like the Council's vessels. Smaller than a dreadnought, larger than a destroyer, lean, sharp, and predatory. Where alien ships were graceful and symmetrical, this one was brutal, angular, and purposeful. Every line had meaning. Every plate had backup. It wasn't designed to impress. It was designed to win. One evening, Amy joined Jake on a high gantry overlooking the half-finished hull. "What are we going to call her?" she asked quietly. Jake thought for a long moment, eyes fixed on the gleaming frame below. "Defiance," he said at last. "We'll call her Defiance." Amy smiled. The name fit perfectly. It was humanity's message to the galaxy. "We will take your trash and make it something that changes everything." The Council had given them broken machines and obsolete scraps, expecting gratitude and decades of slow progress. They believed humans would follow the same learning curve as every other new species. But humans never followed paths. They carved their own through chaos and fire. They took the impossible and made it work. The Defiance was more than a ship. It was a declaration. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. Jake watched his engineers work tirelessly through the nights, welding, calibrating, testing. They hardly slept, driven by purpose and pride. They knew the galaxy's eyes would soon be on them, even if it didn't realize it yet. In a few short months, the Defiance would be ready to fly. And when she did, the stars themselves would bear witness to what it meant when humans refused to quit. The Galactic Council's reaction was exactly as Jake expected: indifferent. The Oversight Committee dispatched a single inspector, a bureaucrat named Vexus from the Pelian worlds. He spent 3 hours aboard the Defiance, scribbled his notes, and left without comment. Amy later read his report aloud, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "They think it's just another patrol vessel. Fusion cores, adequate. Shields, standard. Weapons, unremarkable." Henry burst out laughing. "They don't have the faintest idea what they're looking at, Captain. They saw hybrid emitters and assumed Pelion tech. They saw our railguns and thought they were standard mass drivers. They have no clue what we've built." Jake smiled. "Good, let them think we're insignificant. We'll show them soon enough." That chance came only 3 weeks later. The Defiance was ordered on a routine patrol near the border of the Kresh Dominion, a lawless frontier where pirates and raiders ruled. Then, a distress call came through from a mining colony on Terran IV. "Multiple hostile, enemy vessels are attacking. We're under heavy weapons fire and need immediate assistance now." Jake asked, "Where's the nearest Council cruiser that can respond?" Amy tapped her tactical console and replied, 40 minutes away, sir. We're only 8 minutes from Terran IV." Jake rose from his command seat and ordered, "Set our heading, maximum thrust." "Amy, bring all batteries online. Henry, get everything to combat condition now." The bridge erupted with focused action. The crew had trained for months together, running countless simulated engagements, but simulations had never been the same as reality. This time, actual civilians depended on their skill. The Defiance slid out of jump space at the Terran system's outer boundary. The tactical holomap blinked red across multiple vectors. 5 crash raiders waited. They were heavy cruiser-class raiders. They ringed the mining complex and hammered it with plasma cannon fire. The station's defensive grid was critically damaged and near collapse. "They have us on sensor," Amy announced, voice tight. 3 of the raiders peeled away from the station. They bore down to intercept our approach. Jake studied the display with a hard focus. The Kresh Crest ships loomed far larger than the Defiance. Each raider sported roughly triple the firepower of the human vessel. By any conventional metric, this engagement should have been unwinnable for them. Yet the Defiance was not conventional. Jake barked rapid commands. "Amy, reroute all shield harmonics to the bow. Maximum density. Henry, prime the main batteries for firing. Full capacitor charge." Amy cautioned, "Captain, that will leave our aft arc exposed to strikes." Jake's grin was steady. "We're not running," he said. The lead crash cruiser opened fire at extreme range. Plasma slugs streaked through vacuum at terrifying velocity. They slammed into the Defiance's forward shields with tremendous force, but the energy dispersed without breaching. Amy's adaptive routines immediately analyzed the incoming plasma modulation. The shields retuned their harmonic filters in real time. Subsequent impacts proved increasingly ineffective. "They're off balance, Captain," Amy reported, a hint of triumph in her tone. "They're ramping up output." "Let them bleed their reserves," Jake replied. "Close to effective engagement range. Weapons, stand by. Fire on my mark." The gunnery crews tightened their grips, eyes bright with purpose, waiting for the moment to unleash the Defiance's wrath and claim victory. The Defiance's primary weapons weren't plasma cannons like those favored by most alien navies, nor were they particle beams or graviton disruptors. They were rail guns, magnetic accelerators that hurled solid metal slugs at nearly the speed of light. It was old technology by galactic standards, simple and brutally efficient. The galaxy had long dismissed kinetic weaponry as obsolete, forgetting what it could do when reinvented by human hands. Each tungsten round weighed 5 tons and traveled at a velocity that made even light seem impatient. When the Defiance fired, 2 shimmering streaks of death tore across the void and slammed into the lead Kresh cruiser dead center. The alien ship's shields, built to deflect energy-based attacks, barely even registered the impact before shattering. The projectiles ripped through armor as though it were foil, vaporizing entire decks in milliseconds. The cruiser disintegrated in a chain of explosions, fragmenting into 1,000 burning shards. The 2 remaining intercepting raiders froze mid-maneuver. Jake could almost see the panic flooding their bridges, disbelief that a single human volley had annihilated a warship 3 times their size. 1 shot, 1 kill? That wasn't supposed to happen. In galactic warfare, battles dragged on for hours, sometimes days. Victory came slowly, through attrition and endurance. But not today. How long to reload? Jake asked. 30 seconds, Captain, Henry replied. But our missile batteries are armed and ready. Then launch, Jake ordered. The Defiance's missile systems were a hybrid creation, a fusion of 4 alien designs enhanced with human improvements. Smarter guidance, faster drives, deadlier payloads. And because humanity never forgot the lessons of the atomic age, each missile carried a nuclear warhead. The Kresh raiders fired wildly to intercept them, vaporizing most. But 8 missiles broke through the defensive grid. 8 nuclear detonations erupted with surgical precision, washing the void in blinding white fire. The shock waves overwhelmed their shields, fried their sensors, and left them drifting blind and crippled. "Railguns ready," Henry shouted. Jake gave a single nod. Fire at will. 2 thunderous slugs shot across the stars. 2 more Kresh cruisers ceased to exist. The remaining pair near the mining station saw the slaughter and fled in panic, jumping to faster-than-light speed without firing another shot. Silence hung on the bridge for a heartbeat. Then someone began to clap. Within seconds, the entire crew erupted in cheers and applause. Jake allowed himself a small, quiet smile before returning to command mode. "Damage report. Forward shields at 60%, Amy said. "Minor stress fractures in the railgun barrels, but nothing serious." Henry shook his head in disbelief. 3 raiders down in under 4 minutes. "Captain, we just rewrote space combat." Jake looked out the viewport at the wreckage field, twisted metal and burning wrecks drifting through the void. "No, Henry," he said softly. "We just reminded everyone why you never hand humans your scrap and expect them to stay quiet." News of the Defiance's victory at Terran IV spread through the Galactic Council faster than any ship could travel. Within a week, it became the most discussed vessel in known space, not because of its appearance or size, but because of what it had done. A ship built from wreckage had shattered one of the galaxy's most feared raider fleets in minutes. Soon after, Jake received new orders. Report to Council headquarters. The headquarters orbited Vale Prime, the shining capital of the Council. The station was vast and breathtaking, a masterpiece of alien artistry, all sweeping arcs, flowing lines, and softly glowing light. The Pelians had designed it, creatures who prized elegance as much as function. Jake arrived alongside Amy and Henry. The 3 walked through hallways filled with delegates from dozens of species. Some nodded with visible respect. Others stared in curiosity. A few watched them with thinly veiled unease. The council chamber itself was circular, rising tier by tier around a central speaking platform. At its highest ring sat the 5 high counselors, representatives of the ancient species that had founded the council ages ago. The Pelian High Counselor sat among them, serene and unreadable. Build our own. The words hung in the air like the echo of a thunderclap. The entire chamber went still. High Counselor Aravan tilted his head slightly, the crystalline chime of his voice deceptively calm. Captain Morrison, the Galactic Council has existed for over 8,000 years. It was founded on cooperation, restraint, and mutual understanding. Humanity's approach seems to value aggression over diplomacy. Jake met his gaze steadily. With respect, Counselor, diplomacy didn't save Terran 4. Action did. A ripple of murmurs moved through the chamber again. The insectoid Vexen delegate's wings fluttered in agitation. You imply that our norms are weakness, she hissed. Jake shook his head. I imply nothing, Counselor. I'm simply saying that survival sometimes requires strength. Real strength. The kind that doesn't wait for permission. Krell's scales pulsed in deep crimson. And if every young species believed that, he growled, if they all ignored council law, the galaxy would descend into chaos. Jake's voice stayed calm, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. Maybe it already is, Counselor. You just don't see it from your high seats. Gasps spread through the chamber. Amy, standing behind him, tensed but said nothing. Henry shifted uneasily. Aravan leaned forward, his many-faceted eyes gleaming like glass. You walk a dangerous line, Captain. Do you think humanity can survive outside the Council's protection? Jake gave a faint smile. We survived before you even knew we existed. We'll survive long after. The silence that followed was heavy and electric. Even the ambient hum of the chamber seemed to fade. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Aravan rose gracefully to his feet. Very well, he said softly, though the edge in his voice cut like a blade. Your actions at Terran 4 will be recorded and reviewed. The Defiance will remain under observation. Humanity, it seems, has much to learn about cooperation. Jake bowed slightly, the gesture formal but without humility. And the galaxy, Counselor, he said, has much to learn about humanity. The chamber erupted again, voices overlapping in outrage, fascination, and unease. Jake turned and walked out, Amy and Henry following close behind. As they stepped into the corridor, Amy whispered, "That could have gone worse." Jake gave a small, humorless chuckle. "Oh, it will go worse," he said. "They're afraid. And when the powerful get afraid, they start making plans." Henry frowned. "What kind of plans?" Jake's expression hardened as he looked out through the transparent corridor wall at the glittering expanse of Vale Prime below. The kind that remind us why we built the Defiance in the first place. Species in the Council gathered to witness what many were already calling the match of the century. The Keeley's proving grounds shimmered in the void, an expanse of deep space filled with floating beacons, sensor arrays and observation platforms. Dozens of ships from across the galaxy drifted in formation, carrying delegates, admirals, and media representatives eager to see if humanity's so-called miracle ship could stand against one of the Council's finest dreadnoughts. Inside the Defiance, Jake stood on the command deck, calm but focused. The faint hum of the ship's hybrid reactor filled the silence. Amy's hands moved across her console, checking power distribution and sensor calibration. Henry reported, "Weapons systems calibrated for simulation parameters. All shots will register impact without real damage." Jake nodded. "Let's show them what human improvisation looks like." On the display screen, the Stormbreaker loomed, a vast, obsidian-hulled dreadnought bristling with energy cannons and shield emitters. Commander Vex appeared via hologram, his scaled features set in a confident grin. "Captain Morrison," he rumbled, "try not to embarrass yourself too quickly." Jake smiled thinly. No promises. The countdown reached 0. The simulated battle began. Instantly, the Stormbreaker opened fire with precision volleys. Massive plasma bursts streaked toward the Defiance, lighting the darkness. Amy shouted, "Incoming!" Shields holding at 94%. Jake ordered evasive maneuvers, and the Defiance rolled sharply, its engines flaring as it weaved between incoming blasts with agility no capital ship of its size should have possessed. The spectators across the system watched in astonishment. The Stormbreaker was stronger, heavier, and better armed, but the Defiance moved like a fighter craft. "Target their sensor arrays," Jake commanded. "Blind them before they can lock us down." Henry's hands flew across his station. Loaded and ready, the ship fired a salvo of kinetic rounds, dense magnetic slugs moving near light speed. Each shot struck the Stormbreaker's forward shield array, sending ripples of distortion across its surface. Vex's confident grin faded. "Impressive," he muttered. The Defiance darted underneath the dreadnought, thrusters flaring as it deployed decoy drones that mimicked engine signatures. On the observation platforms, alien spectators gasped as the dreadnought fired at false targets, its own targeting systems overwhelmed by unpredictable human tactics. Amy reported, "Simulated hull breach on their port side. Scoring system gives us a 30-point lead." Jake remained calm. "Don't celebrate yet. He's not done." As if on cue, the Stormbreaker countered, unleashing a gravity well pulse that dragged the Defiance off balance. The ship shuddered violently. Sparks burst from a console. Henry cursed. "He's using tractor harmonics, never seen those used in a simulation." Jake smirked. "Then he's not the only one allowed to improvise. Divert reactor output to the forward coils. Prepare the pulse." Amy blinked. "That'll overload our systems." "Only if we miss," Jake said. The Defiance surged forward, engines screaming as it released a concentrated electromagnetic pulse. The blast rippled through space, shorting out the Stormbreaker's simulated shields and sensors. The massive ship went dark on the display. Silence filled the chamber. Then the scoreboard updated. Defiance. Victory confirmed. On the broadcast screens across the galaxy, millions of viewers erupted in disbelief. Commander Vex's hologram reappeared. For a moment, he just stared at Jake. Then slowly he smiled, a genuine warrior's smile. "Well fought, Captain Morrison. Humanity has earned its place." Jake inclined his head. "And we intend to keep it." The signal ended. The Defiance's crew burst into cheers. Amy laughed in relief. Henry pumped a fist in the air. Jake simply looked out at the stars. He knew what came next. The galaxy had just witnessed what human creativity and unpredictability could do. And somewhere, in the silent chambers of power, the oldest empires were beginning to ask themselves the same uneasy question. What happens when humanity stops playing by their rules entirely? Absorbed the onslaught. The ship shuddered violently under the combined force of 30 warships attacking at once. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Amy shouted, "Shields holding, but they won't last long under this intensity." Jake gritted his teeth. "Maintain formation. Focus on evasion patterns Delta 9. Prioritize survival over counterfire until we analyze their formation." The Defiance twisted through the storm of plasma and missiles, her maneuvering thrusters firing in perfect synchronization. She rolled and dove, the hull groaning under pressure as she slipped through near misses that would have vaporized lesser ships. The bridge trembled again as another barrage grazed the aft shields. Sparks flew from a console and Henry yelled, "Aft shields at 50%. We've got overload warnings across 3 sectors. Divert auxiliary power from the life support backups," Jake ordered. "We'll breathe later if we survive this." Amy's fingers flew across her control board, rerouting power and launching decoy drones that streaked outward, emitting false sensor signatures. Several of the Dominion ships broke formation to pursue the false targets. Jake saw the gap immediately. "That's it. Open a path through the lower vector." The Defiance's engines roared as she surged forward, diving straight through the pocket of disrupted enemy formation. 3 Dominion destroyers turned to intercept, weapons charging. But the human ship was faster. "Fire main battery!" Jake barked. Henry complied. The railguns thundered, launching high-density kinetic rounds. The first 2 shots struck the lead destroyer dead center, registering simulated catastrophic impacts. The wargame sensors confirmed what everyone already knew. In a real battle, the destroyer would have been obliterated. Amy called out, "One down! 2 more trying to flank! Rotate shields, starboard priority!" Jake commanded. "Bring secondary weapons online." Ion pulses flared from the Defiance's flanks, detonating near the enemy ships and scrambling their sensors. For a few precious seconds, the Dominion fleet lost tracking. Jake seized the moment. "Plot an escape course through Vector 7, full burn!" Henry's hands moved without hesitation. "Engines at 110%, Captain." The Defiance accelerated hard, twisting through the chaos like a dart of molten silver. Dozens of plasma bolts streaked past, close enough to light the hull in eerie reflections. Then a proximity alarm screamed. One of the enemy cruisers had cut them off. It unleashed a concentrated barrage of particle fire that struck the Defiance's forward shields head-on. The ship lurched. Amy was thrown against her console. "Forward shields collapsing," she shouted. "We can't take another hit like that." Jake slammed his hand on the armrest. "Target that cruiser's reactor signature. Fire all rail batteries." The Defiance's main guns fired in a rapid triple volley. The kinetic rounds streaked across the void, striking the cruiser's core. The simulation computer registered a lethal hit. The hostile vessel went dark on the tactical display. "Direct hit!" Henry shouted, but there was no time to celebrate. Amy's voice cut through the noise. "Captain, new contacts inbound. 12 more ships dropping out of FTL. We're surrounded again." Jake's jaw tightened. "They're trying to bury us under sheer numbers." He looked around at his crew, tired, bruised, but determined. "Fine," he said quietly. "Let's remind them why humanity doesn't quit." The Defiance's engines flared brighter than ever before as she dove straight into the heart of the Dominion formation. Railguns, missiles, and ion cannons fired in coordinated bursts. For every simulated hit they took, they returned 3. The tactical display became a sea of red and gold markers, ships disabled, shields broken, systems failing. But even as the Defiance fought back with impossible ferocity, Jake knew they were nearing their limits. Power reserves were dropping fast, and the shield generators were overheating. Amy glanced at him, her face pale but steady. "Captain, we can't keep this up much longer." Jake exhaled slowly. "Then we make it count." He turned toward Henry. "Overload the railgun capacitors." "One last salvo. Target the command ship." Henry hesitated. "That'll burn out half the systems on board." Jake met his eyes. "Do it anyway." Moments later, the Defiant's weapons roared one final time. The kinetic projectiles slammed into the Dominion flagship's core. The simulation data spiked. Every sensor on every watching station recorded the result: total annihilation. Then, as the last railgun coil melted down, the Defiance drifted in silence, shields gone, engines flickering, but they were still alive, across the galaxy. The footage of that battle would be replayed for generations, a single human ship standing against an armada and refusing to die quietly. And in the deepest halls of the Council, fear began to take root, not fear of humanity's weapons, but of their will. Adjusted to the incoming fire. Yet even the finest technology ever crafted had limits. 30 vessels firing at the same time was more than any single craft could possibly withstand for very long. Amy reported quickly and said, "Shields are at 70% strength and dropping fast. Point defense is eliminating most of the missiles, but we are taking significant damage." Jake asked, "What is the Council's response?" Amy said, "The closest Council ships are 40 minutes away from our position. Captain, we cannot hold out that long against this many enemies." Jake stared at the tactical display screen. It showed 30 red enemy markers surrounding one blue friendly marker. By every mathematical calculation, this battle was completely impossible to win. Yet humans had built entire careers and legions on doing things that were supposed to be impossible. Jake asked, "Henry, do we still have those experimental torpedoes you have been secretly working on?" Henry's eyes went wide with surprise. He said, "Captain, those weapons have not been tested in real combat. They are based on theoretical physics using Vexen jump drive technology. If they malfunction or fail, we could." Jake interrupted and said, "We are dead anyway if we do nothing." Though the torpedoes were an enormous gamble. Henry's engineering team had discovered that Vexen jump drives created tiny microscopic tears in the fabric of space and time. What if someone weaponized that effect? What if you created a torpedo that did not just explode normally? What if it briefly destabilized local space itself? The mathematical models worked on paper. Probably the computer simulations had shown promise. Probably. Henry announced that torpedoes are loaded and ready to fire. Captain Jake selected 8 targets carefully on his display. He did not choose the strongest enemy ships. He chose the ones in key positions that were maintaining the sphere formation around them. Jake said, "Amy, the exact moment those torpedoes launch, I want you to divert all available power to the engines. We are going to break through their formation." Amy said, "Captain, if the torpedoes do not work as intended," Jake said, "then we ram the nearest enemy ship and take as many of them with us as we can. Fire the torpedoes." 8 torpedoes launched simultaneously from the Defiance. Each one targeted a different crash vessel. For exactly 3 seconds, nothing happened. The Crush Fleet commander was probably laughing at the seemingly ineffective human weapons. Then the torpedoes detonated and everything changed. Space itself seemed to scream in agony. Localized distortions rippled outward from each detonation point like waves on water. The targeted crest ships did not explode in the normal way. They collapsed inward on themselves. They were crushed by gravitational forces that their shields could not even comprehend or defend against. 8 vessels crumpled like paper crushed in a giant fist. Their structures simply could not withstand the dimensional stress. The perfect crash formation broke apart immediately. Panic spread through their ranks like wildfire. They had come to this battle expecting an easy kill. Instead, they witnessed weapons that seemed to violate their entire understanding of physics and reality. Jake shouted, "Go now!" The Defiance accelerated hard through the gap in the formation. Her shields flared bright white as she took hits from disorganized and panicked enemy fire, but the concentrated assault had been broken. The Crash were no longer fighting as a disciplined military unit. "Amy said they are trying to regroup, Captain, but they are being much more cautious now. They saw what those torpedoes can do." Jake smiled grimly. "Hesked, how many torpedoes do we have remaining?" Henry said, "We have 4 left, Captain. And I must warn you, the first salvo created severe stress on our launch systems. We might be able to fire 1 more salvo before the systems overload completely and become useless." Jake said then, "We need to make every single one count." Amy, identify their flagship. I want the biggest and most threatening vessel in their fleet. Henry, I want every remaining torpedo locked onto that single target. Amy protested and said, "Captain, concentrating all our firepower on one target seems wasteful." Jake said, "No, it is not wasteful. It is sending a message. They came here to prove that humans can be killed. We are going to prove that challenging humanity has severe consequences." The Crush flagship was easy to identify on the sensors. It was a massive battle cruiser that was twice the size of any other vessel in the entire fleet. It was Zarov's personal command ship. Henry confirmed that all systems are locked on target, Captain. Jake said, "Fire all remaining torpedoes," then immediately jumped to the nearest council station at maximum possible speed. 4 torpedoes launched together. The Crash flagship detected them instantly. It activated every point defense system it had. It launched countermeasures and decoys. The defensive systems managed to destroy 1 torpedo. 2 more detonated prematurely. Their effects were still devastating, but not immediately critical to the flagship. The 4th and final torpedo reached its intended target. The flagship did not just collapse like the earlier victims. It was literally torn apart in multiple directions. The ship was pulled by conflicting gravitational stresses that ripped it into pieces. Secondary explosions rippled through its structure as power systems overloaded. Ammunition stores detonated in massive fireballs. Within seconds, the most powerful warship in the entire Crash fleet was nothing but scattered debris floating in space. The remaining Crash vessels fled in terror. The Defiance jumped to faster-than-light speed. Her engines protested loudly but remained functional. As soon as they reached the safety of Council space, Jake ordered a complete damage assessment. The ship had taken critical hits during the battle. Shields were barely operational at only 15%. There were hull breaches on 3 different decks. 2 crew members had been injured, but thankfully not seriously. Amy said quietly, "We should not have survived that battle, Captain." Henry nodded in agreement. He said, "No single ship should be able to survive 30 against 1 odds. But somehow we did it." Jake looked at his crew. They were battered and exhausted, but completely unbroken in spirit. He said, "We survived because we refused to accept limitations that others try to impose on us. When someone tells us something is impossible, we prove them wrong. That is what it means to be human. News of the battle reached the Council within only a few hours. The engagement had been monitored by automated sensor networks in that region. The entire galaxy watched as one human ship fought against overwhelming odds and survived. Some called it impossible luck. Others called it brilliant.